Hello, my name is Professor Karola Dillenburger, and I'm the Director of the Centre for Behaviour Analysis in Belfast. And today we will be talking about behaviour analysis and why professional recognition of behaviour analysis is important. Why is professional recognition of behaviour analysis so important? Well, the question about human behavior and the diversity have captured the attention of scientists from a very wide range of philosophical stances for centuries. And while behavior analysts would argue that the natural science is an enlightened perspective when applied to the understanding of the human condition, at times others would prefer applied behavior analysis to be banned or abolished. Today we will discuss a way forward through the development of professional recognition of behavior analysts nationally and internationally. Much of this talk is based on two separate publications, Dillenburger and Keenan 2023 and Keenan, Dillenburger and et al. In 2022 about professional development in the European countries. The learning outcomes today will be that students will be able to differentiate between accurate and inaccurate information about applied behavior analysis, that they will be able to discern levels of support needs related to autism, that they will be able to engage in a discussion about the needs of professional recognition in the context of the behavior analysis and autism. So first of all, we need to think about what is behavior analysis. Behavior analysis has three aspects. There's a conceptual analysis. We call it radical behaviorism because it's very distinct from methodological behaviorism. The word radical can be viewed from different perspectives or differently. In this context, the word radical comes from Latin and means going to the root, meaning going to the root of the origin and essentials. And as I said, the behavior analysis is very distinct from methodological behaviorism, but the detailed discussion of this is not our topic here today. We could go on for a long time on this one. The basic science is also part of behavior analysis, is the experimental analysis of behavior, and then we have the applied science, the application of the science, applied behavior analysis. So when you talk about ABA, this is the applied aspect of the science of behavior analysis. It's important to remember that behavior analysis as a science has those three aspects to it, like any other science. When you think of physics or biology or chemistry, they all have a conceptual basis, the philosophy of science, they have a basic science, and they have an applied science. And like any other science, behavior analysis is taught at university at professionally verified course sequences and on post-qualifying continued education. So behavior analysis and ABA in particular is not something that you can pick up on a 2-day course or 1.5-day course or something like that. It is a master's level training at university level. So what is the subject matter of the science of behavior analysis? Well, obviously the subject matter is related to behavior, but what about all these other things that we see in psychology textbooks, like motivation, like language, like learning, like development, like thinking and cognition, like the mind, sensation and feelings? What about those things? Are they not part of the science of behavior? Well, the difference is here that we as behavior analysts, we would consider these all to fall under the big label of behavior. So learning is all about behavior change. Motivation is all about reinforcement and how we get motivated to behave in certain ways. Feelings and emotions are behavior. They're private behavior, but they're still behavior. The mind is the same. We are not really dividing between the body and the mind. We're looking at behavior and so forth. Development is all about behavior. Motivation is all about behavior. Physical movement, of course, that most people would agree that that's behavior. Sensation, how we feel, what we feel. Language is verbal behavior, and thinking and cognition is all about behavior. So the holistic view of behavior, of the science of behavior analysis, is that everything a human being does, whether they do feel, they do think, that all those verbs, everything that is a verb is about doing things, and this is all falls under behavior. So we then go to the applied aspect of the science. Applied behavior analysis is a very clear definition of applied behavior analysis. And it is about the discovery of environmental variables that reliably influence socially significant behavior and develop interventions for behavior change that take a practical advantage of these discoveries from the experimental analysis of behavior. So here are a number of, the reason why I've divided this definition into 3 bullet points is because these are all really important bullet points to pull out of the definition. We need to discover environmental variables, okay, that influence. So there could be a lot of environmental variables that don't influence, but what we're interested in applied behavior analysis are the environmental variables that influence socially significant behavior. Okay, so if a behavior is not socially significant, we're not talking about applied behavior analysis. We're talking about socially significant behavior, because you could teach people a whole lot of things that are not socially significant. That's not falling under this definition. Now we can have a whole long discussion about what is socially significant and who is it significant for. That's a big discussion, and it's an important discussion. But the point here is that the definition means it's socially significant, whatever way you define socially significance. And we then develop interventions for behavior change that take practical advantage of these discoveries from the experimental analysis. So the point is that ABA is practiced in many, many areas, including autism. So here is a whole list of different behaviors that uses behavior analysis. This is from the special interest groups of the Association for Behavior Analysis International. Here's a whole list of things that behavior analysis would look at and would deal with and would address and analyze. Autism is just one of those interests. Now, many people think that ABA is just for autism. Well, you can see here that it's just simply not the case. Okay, autism is very much one of the fields in the special interests of behavior analysts, but there are many, many more interests. So, but because we're looking at autism as a larger field, and in terms of behavior analysis, it has had a major impact. Let's have a quick look at what is autism. Autism was first in the diagnostic manual in 1980, so it's not really, it's just 24 years ago. It's not, 44 years ago. It's not that long ago. In the DSM-3, autism was the first time mentioned. And at that time, or before that, profoundly autistic people were considered unteachable and unreachable and commonly confined to lifetime and institutional care. So 40, 50 years ago, this is what happened to profoundly autistic people. And those who presented with challenging behaviors were exposed to electroconvulsive therapy and or physical or pharmacological restraint. So in the 60s, so slightly before the diagnosis, but still quite not that long ago, really, behavior analysts in the USA were the first professionals who were able to show that profoundly autistic individuals were not unteachable, as previously thought, but that they could be taught and that they could learn, providing appropriate teaching procedures were available. Okay, just remember, at that time, people were just saying this person is autistic and put them into an institution and probably using ECTs or other kinds of pharmacological restraints on them. So then in the DSM-4, autism was still included in a whole range of different definitions, and there was also, interestingly, the definition between autism and Asperger's syndrome. But that changed in 2013, so that's already quite a while back. In the DSM-5, the term autism spectrum disorders came in place, and that combined profound autism with Asperger's syndrome. Asperger's syndrome in the DSM-4 was defined as having autism, but not with an intellectual disability, sometimes even considered people to have superior intellect. So they now combine these two, from profound autism right across to people with potentially superior intellect. Since then, the fight for awareness, acceptance, and equal rights has been shaped by autistic self-advocates, mainly through the neurodiversity movement. There has also So they expose the consequences of discrimination, ableism, a normalizing agenda, being viewed from a medical rather than a social model, and misunderstandings concerning support needs. But of course, there's a bit of an issue here, because if you give just one diagnosis label for people that are profoundly affected and people who have autism, but they might have intellectual, are very capable intellectually, um, it's going to be a problem if you put them all under the same diagnostic label, and that's what's been happening. Um, Interestingly, now at the moment, there's also a phenomenon where people self-identify as autistic, so they don't actually have a DSM-5 diagnosis, because a diagnosis, an official diagnosis, a clinical diagnosis would be happening and would be given by clinical professionals. And so at the moment in Europe and in the UK and maybe further afield, there are more and more people who self-identify as autistic, so they do not have a clinical diagnosis. But when it comes to autism, to profound autism, I would advise you to look at that video by Lee Wachtel. Here's a YouTube link. It takes about an hour to watch, and it is definitely worth watching, because the National Council for Severe Autism, it's a webinar that Dr. Wachtel was giving, and it really points out, and this is just one picture, one screenshot taken from that presentation. Here we see Greta Thunberg, who is most people probably recognize as a climate change activist. She would be diagnosed, I think, or she had Asperger syndrome, who can speak for herself very well and speak for other people as well. And Dr. Wachtel contrasts that with the self-interest behaviors and the very severe injuries that she sees in the clinic that she's working in, where people with very profound autism and severe self-injurious behavior, they all have the same diagnosis. They would all be considered on the autism spectrum at the moment. So some of these self-advocates, not Greta Thunberg, but some of these self-advocates express very strong views against ABA. They say there's potential side effects, there's autistics say no, alternatives, they're looking for alternatives. And one of the things why I always start my presentations with a definition of what ABA is and how it fits into the science of behavior analysis is because many of these people have not studied ABA in any depth at all. So when they talk about ABA, it is not it's not the same at all that when I talk about ABA. So it's an abbreviation that has gone in the wrong direction. What these people often talk about is discrimination, ableism, normalizing a gender, and being viewed from the medical rather than the social model. And of course, misunderstanding support needs. They're talking about those kind of things, and they think that's anything to do with ABA when it hasn't. It's a societal problem, and it needs to be dealt with. The views of anti-ABA, some of these adult self-advocates, stands in stark contrast with some of the parents of children diagnosed with profound autism who express strong views so for instance, in the Autism Science Foundation, we have a YouTube video of Voice for Severe Autism. We have Johnny McCready, who's 18, who is non-vocal and has severe autism, and the mother is a very strong proponent of supporting him through ABA, with ideas where, for instance, she could not take him for a walk and had to hold on to his hand very strongly when she was taking him for a walk, and then she puts videos on social media where Johnny is allowed to run across the beach and having a wonderful time. And she said, now that he has learned to come back when I call his name, and he can safely run around the beach and having a wonderful time. Whereas before ABA, that would not have been possible. And the same, the family here, Hector's family, are under the social label of Parents' Guide to Coping with Autism. You can see many videos of pro-ABA views. People have benefited from ABA. And I want to show you just one autistic adult who's benefited from ABA, who I've known for a number of years. And some time ago, I sent him some questions and asked him would he be prepared to make a short video for me to share with people. And he was very happy to do that. He was not one of my clients because the ethical requirements for behavior analysts does not allow you to recruit your own clients. But he is no longer receiving services from a colleague of mine, and he was happy to talk to me. So I'm going to play just a short wee clip of this.
Hi, I'm Eli Allen. I'm 20 years old, and I'm currently a student at Mitchell College. I'm first going to get my bachelor's in early childhood, get certification, but then I may eventually want to go to grad school, getting either a master or a doctor in ABA, and go more to a school psych route by doing, evaluations and working with the kids and doing the assessment, doing the home programs. And my first memory of what it was like when I was, autistic, I remember the feelings of frustration when I couldn't express myself, and zoning out a lot, like and they would say like I wouldn't respond to my name. I was really little to really remember the whole ABA program because I was like 3.5, 4. But I do remember Bobby and I remember the home program. Before we did ABA, I had ABA. We did other interventions, but the only thing that really got me to talk and to look at people and learn all the skills I was lacking was ABA.
Okay, you can see more of Eli Allen on YouTube as well. Okay, so when we have this discrepancy between people who are saying that they don't want ABA and other people saying we have benefited greatly from it, there is a consequence for the children, for the young children with autism, because over the years the ABA services have not been provided, and so the Education Authority has apologised over educational needs failings, and other people have been calling in the Lancet for the need to improve autism services, especially in lower resource places. And the consequences for ABA is that there's been caricatures and misunderstandings that don't look anything like the ABA that is taught at university. But the social media is full of these caricatures. And you sort of think like, what? This is not the ABA that I've learned or that I'm teaching my students. This has a great impact on decision making. Because obviously decisions about the provision of ABA-based services need to be based on accurate information, and the ethical and precise application of the science of behavior is the bedrock upon which ABA professionals base their work. So some people who've never studied ABA unashamedly dismiss it without even the slightest concern about falling prey to the most basic forms of propaganda and prejudice that is rife in the helping professions. So who should be trusted? Someone not trained in ABA who makes confusing, erroneous, and perplexing statements about ABA, someone who benefits financially on or otherwise if ABA-based interventions are not implemented, or certified professionally trained and recognized behavior analyst who spent many years of training and who adheres to an ethical code, the training at university level. An autistic adult with first-hand experience of good ABA practice like Eli, or parents whose children have benefited from ABA-based intervention, who should be trusted? For consumers and service users, without professional regulation, misrepresentation is rife. Consumers are not protected or safeguarded, and there's no agreed definition of the scope of practice or the scope of competence for behavior analysts. Professional standards and ethics are not legally enshrined, and service users have limited access to well-trained behavior analysts. So as you can see, without professional recognition, the situation that I have described so far has been allowed to be maintained over many, many years, and professional regulation is really the only way to combat these this lack of services and the misunderstanding. Of course, there's also restricted cross-border mobility for professionals. That's probably not the most important consideration, but it's also true without professional regulation. Professionals cannot be mobile. So, what happens to the professional title behavior analyst? In most non-US countries, the title behavior analyst is not protected, which means that anybody can call themselves a behavior analyst. Okay, anybody can say, I'm doing ABA, I'm a behavior analyst, because if the professional title is not protected, you can just say that. Nobody can do anything about it. There's also discrimination, violence, and abuse. So where there is law breaking by behavior analysts, they're not all angels. They can also, if there is law breaking, this needs to be investigated and addressed immediately through legal channels. There are laws against discrimination. There are laws against abuse. And there obviously are laws against violence. So if anybody calls themselves a behavior analyst and does any of those things, they need to be legally challenged and put through the court system. Where there's malpractice, this needs to be investigated and stopped immediately. The problem here is that people there might be some malpractice and people then blame the science, and you shouldn't be blaming the science for bad practice. The problem is if there's malpractice, and maybe it's malpractice, not just law breaking, not as bad as that, but just bad practice. If the profession is not legally recognized in the country, there's very little people can do. So if there's misrepresentation and ethics, where there's misrepresentation, this needs to be stopped. Ethical standards of applied behavior analysis need to become more widely known. What are the consequences for decision making? All of the 50 states in the US, as well as the District of Columbia and the US Virgin Islands, have introduced laws that mandate the availability of ABA-based intervention programs for autism where appropriate and necessary. In fact, what happens oftentimes is a doctor makes a prescription for those services, and the insurance companies then have to pay for them. Why are national education and health authorities in other countries so far behind? Because this is only in the US and really, I think in North America where this is happening. But in other countries, in Europe and across the rest of the world, there are no laws to say that children with autism, if they need it, if it's appropriate and necessary, they should get ABA-based program interventions. Now, the reason why I'm saying that is that there is so much evidence in favor of ABA-based interventions that this talk is not about the evidence for this. This talk is about professional recognition, and I refer you to other talks that are talking about the evidence base of behavior analysis and ABA. So you should ask why. What are the motives? What are the motives behind not endorsing a significant movement towards professional recognition of behavior analysts whose practice is guided by the application of the science of behavior analysis? Who protects the title? In the past, most European behavior analysts adhered to the standards set by the US-based Behavior Analyst Certification Board and became board-certified behavior analysts. However, the title Board Certified Behavior Analysis is a USA-based certification, and many states have a licensure as well to cover that. It is not recognized officially or legally in any jurisdiction outside of USA, Canada. It is used in those jurisdictions, but it is not legally recognized. It's not officially recognized by their governments in the law. Therefore, behavior analysts working outside the USA and Canada cannot become BCBAs since 2023. Until then, people outside of US and Canada did become BCBAs, but there was no legal background to that. It was just people in Europe were getting an American qualification. But if they practiced in Europe, it meant very little. It meant nothing legally. Okay. So legally, no organization can provide international recognition outside their own jurisdiction. Okay, so a USA-based certification do not apply in other countries. So the French government or the Spanish government or the German government or the UK government will not recognize a USA-based certification. Professional recognition and regulation can only be granted by a national government. in national jurisdiction where the national laws apply. Okay, you can understand that a French government or Spanish government will not adhere to foreign laws. That's just not how things happen. Some European countries have started the labour-intensive work towards professional recognition of behaviour analysts in their own jurisdiction. But any country that wants to do this needs to adhere to their own national process and policy for professional recognition. And these differ between countries, especially the process and how do you get a qualification recognized by the government. Now, most countries have recognized a number of different qualifications already, like clinical psychologists, medical doctors, architects, and speech and language therapists. Most of those professions have been recognized through a legal system in different countries. So behavior analysts who want to do that in their country would need to look at how did they do it, what are the regulations, what are the procedures, what is the policy to get a new profession recognized in my country. There are two countries that have actually achieved this in Europe. The first one is the Czech Republic. The Czech Republic was the first country in Europe to recognize the profession as behavior analysts within its legal system. In 2017, the allied health profession of behavior analyst was established, including the ranks of assistant behavior analyst and behavior technicians. And here's a number of the act that is enshrined in law in the Czech Republic to safeguard these professions. The second country that has achieved this is the United Kingdom, and it was only in January 2023 where the Professional Standards Authority officially recognised the Register of Behaviour Analysts in the UK Society for Behaviour Analysts. This process started in 2009, so you can see how long it took to do this. It's a long and onerous process, but in the UK, the way professions are recognised and registered, there's a Professional Standards Authority, and they officially recognise registers of societies, professional societies. So that is, for instance, the Healthcare and Professional Council have a register of different professions. These are all registered and recognised by the Professional Standards Authority. That's just how it works in the UK. Every country needs to look at their own system. As you can see in those two examples here, there is quite a different system where the Czech Republic has a single law to cover the allied health profession. In the UK, it works through the Professional Standards Authority. So what we did, we started a project called Euroba, European Behavior Analyst. And this was a 3-year project between 2020 and 2023, funded through the European Commission and Erasmus program, Erasmus Plus. It included 9 partners. There were 3 from the United Kingdom. There was Greece, Sweden, Italy, Ireland, Czech Republic, and the Netherlands. And what we were trying to do is to develop the materials that would support countries to go through that process. Because when the process might be very individualized in each country, but of course, all of those processes require an awful lot of paperwork to be completed about the description of the profession and so forth. So we were trying to offer a standardized or a common basic description, because when countries have recognized across Europe, when countries have recognized a profession, they can then go for multilateral agreements. But they have to recognize the profession in their own country first before they can do that, because you can't recognize a profession in Europe that isn't recognized in their own in any of the European countries. So the aim of the project was to help countries aiming to achieve professional recognition of behavior analysts in their jurisdiction. So these materials can be used by the Greeks, they can be used in Greece, by the Swedes, can be used in Sweden, by the Italians, can be used in Italy, and so forth. At the moment, these materials are available in 6 languages. In those 6 partner languages, but of course they are also can be translated quite easily these days. And the good thing about the Europa project was that it was funded through the Erasmus program, which means copyright lies within the European Commission, and therefore they're freely available to any EU countries. So when it is achieved that when countries have gained professional recognition in their own country, Then we can facilitate a mutual recognition across Europe to develop common standards and curricula in 6 languages, and we were trying to so that they would be free to translate for other people. Because any other curricula that you might find elsewhere, you might have to pay quite a lot of money to have copyright. But with these curricula belonging to the European Commission, and they haven't copyright, that's not the issue here. So we did six intellectual outputs. The first one was we mapped the profession of behavior analysts onto the European qualifications framework. The second one, that was more a local one. We described the progress of 6 partner countries based on their national qualification frameworks and map that onto the European qualification framework. So that gives you an example what you probably would have to do in your country. You'd have to look at your own national qualifications framework and see how behavior analysts fit there, and then map that onto the European qualifications framework if that's what you want to do. We also did a glossary to make sure that we all to speak the same language. And then we did another couple of important intellectual outputs. The first one was we made a document that also lists the key competencies for a Yoruba technician level. So this is a technical pre-degree level. In the American vernacular, that was a registered behavior technician. Obviously, we don't. It's not exactly the same, but it's on the same level. And this document offers a guide to course developers as well. We then did the very similar thing in terms of competencies for the master's level, and offered a guide for course developers as well. So so this, anybody wants to develop the professional recognition could take those documents and adjust them to themselves. But these are basic key competences. And then we provided a multimedia resource that's free of charge, and a technician course at simplestepsautism.com. In those languages, simplestepsautism.com is it's available in 10 different languages at the moment because previous work had been happening, so applied behavior analysis, why professional recognition is important. Just to go back after the practicalities, we've just talked about the practicalities and what countries would have to do to get professional recognition. It's a long process. It takes a professional organization. It takes a lot of people to work together. And to really keep that aim in mind, we need professional recognition of behavior analysts to safeguard the consumers and to safeguard the profession. Because the problem is that there is a strategy often fostered by the establishment called divide and conquer. Julius Caesar used it successfully 22 centuries ago. While autistic self-advocates and behavior analysts are loggerheads, the establishment can continue to discriminate unhindered. We need to get together and between behavior analysts and autistic self-advocates and work together to get this professional recognition established so that we can protect the consumers. While behavior analysts are not a recognized profession, there's no client protection. So in conclusion then, there's a need to engage autistic people who represent the whole autism spectrum and their parents and families. Professionally recognized, well-trained and experienced professionals implement ethical, evidence-based interventions to improve independence and inclusion. And each country has to get a national professional recognition before multilateral agreements can be approached. The Yoruba project developed resources to help countries achieve their goal of professional recognition for behavior analysts. And here are the resources for the Yoruba project, for the Simple Steps resource, for our own Centre for Behavior Analysis at Queen's University. There are multiple resources available, video of webinars and so forth, and a website that myself and Professor Keenan put together, Behavior Analysis, a primer for anybody who wants to have a look further at behavior analysis. Thank you very much.